What's going on, guys? Britta here, back with more free code camps. Learn CSS Grid by Building a Magazine. We are on step 39. Now you can style the content of the dot heading element with CSS Grid. The CSS repeat function is used to repeat a value rather than writing it out manually and is helpful for grid layouts. For example, setting the grid template columns property to repeat 200 pixels would create 20 columns each 200 pixels wide. Give your dot heading a grid template columns property set to repeat to 1FR. Give your heading selector a row gap of 1.5 rem. Remember that the grid column property determines which columns an element starts and ends at. There may be times where you are unsure of how many columns your grid will have, but you want an element to stop at the last column. To do this, you can use the -1 for the end column. Create a dot hero selector and give it a grid column property set to 1/-1. Give the hero selector a position set to relative. You should remove the temporary width attribute before writing the CSS for your image. Temporary width. Okay. Create an image selector. Give the width 100%. Object fit cover. Okay. The object fit property tells the browser how to position the element within its container. In this case, cover will set the image to fill the container, cropping as needed to avoid changing the aspect ratio. And there you can see when we move it how it crops it. Create a dot hero title selector. And give it the text align property set to center, color property set to orange red, font size set to 8 rem. Okay, that made that look much nicer. The subtitle also needs to be styled. Dot hero subtitle, font size set to 2.4 rem, color set to orange red, text align set to center. Okay. Create a dot author selector, font size, we're going to do a 2 rem, font family, we're going to do railway with a fallback of sans serif. Create a dot author name, a hover selector. Give it the background color set to number 306203. So that's green. Where is that at? I don't see where that's at. Where that changed. Dot publish. Oh, the author. Yeah, that. Okay. Publish date. Color RGBA. 255, 255, 255, 0.5. Okay. Dot social icons display grid font size 3 rem. Okay. The default settings for CSS Grid will create additional rows as needed, unlike Flexbox. Give the social icons a grid template columns set to repeat 5 1 FR. Alright, that lined them all up in a row. So arrange the icons in a single row. Okay. If you wanted to add more social icons but keep them on the same row, you would need to update grid template columns to create additional columns. As an alternative, you can use the grid auto flow property. This property takes either row or column as the first value, with an optional second value of dense. Grid auto flow uses an auto placement algorithm to adjust the grid layout. Setting it to column will tell the algorithm to create new columns for content as needed. The dense value allows the algorithm to backtrack and fill holes in the grid with smaller items, which can result in items appearing out of order. For your social icon selector, set the grid auto flow property to column. Our magazine's looking pretty good so far. Now, the auto placement algorithm will kick in when you add a new icon element. However, the algorithm defaults the new column width to be auto, which will not match your current columns. You can override this with the grid auto columns property. Give the social icon selector grid auto columns property set to 1 FR. Much like Flexbox, with CSS Grid, you can align the content of grid items with align items and justify items. Align items will align child elements along the column axis, and justify items will align them along the row axis. Give the social icon selector an align items set to center. Okay. Give the text selector a font size set to 1.8 rem and a letter spacing property set to 0.6. Your text element is not a CSS grid, but you can create columns within an element without using grid by using column width property. Give your text the column width property set to 25 rem. Okay, now we got some columns going on here. Magazines often use justified text in their printed content to structure their layout and control the flow of their content. While this works in printed form, justified text on websites can be an accessibility concern. For example, presenting challenges for folks with dyslexia. To make your project look like a printed magazine, give the text selector a text align property set to justify. The first letter pseudo selector allows you to target the first letter in the text content of an element. Create the dot first paragraph first letter selector and set the font size to 6 rem. Okay, so you can see that made this S big. And we're going to give it a color set to orange red, and it changed that S to orange red. Okay, the other text has been shifted out of place. Move it into position by giving it the first paragraph first letter selector a float property set to left and a margin right set to 1 rem. Create an HR selector and give it a margin property set to 1.5 rem, 0. To give the HR a color, you need to adjust the border property. Give the HR selector a border set to 1 pixel solid RGBA 120 120 120 0.6. Create a dot quote selector and give it a color set to number 00 beef, a font size of 2.4 rem, a text align set to center. So the quote right there. To make the quote text stand out more, give the quote selector a font family of railway with sans serif as the fallback. A quote is not really a quote without proper quotation marks. You can add these with CSS pseudo selectors. Create a dot quote before selector and set the content to with a space following it. I don't think I did that right. Also, okay, I see what we gotta do here. That, this. Alright, that's the quote before, and then we gotta do the quotes after. And we've got to set the content to with the space preceding it. Like that. And we have quotes. Now it's time to style your third section. Note that it has the text and text with images values for the class attribute, which means it is already inheriting the styles from your .text rule. Create a .text with images selector. Set the display to grid. Okay. Alright guys, we have completed up to step 65. I'm going to go ahead and end the episode here. I'm thinking on the next one we're probably going to complete our magazine. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for hanging out, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.